What if the entire distance between the life you are living right now and the life you have always known you were capable of, came down to just 4 things? Not 400 habits. Not a complete personality overhaul. Not circumstances changing, luck arriving, or the right person finally giving you the opportunity you deserve. 4 things. And the most extraordinary part. Every single one of them is already in your possession. There is a particular kind of person that history keeps producing across every era, every culture, every set of circumstances imaginable. People who started with nothing and built something remarkable. People who came from broken homes and created whole families. People who were told, directly or indirectly, loudly or quietly, that they were not enough, and went on to become more than anyone around them could have predicted. These people did not share the same background. They did not share the same opportunities, the same education, the same connections, or the same starting point. But when you study them closely, when you strip away the surface differences and look at the architecture underneath, they share something that is almost eerie in its consistency. They were disciplined about their mouth. They were intentional about their mood. They were serious about their money. And they were ferociously protective of their mind. The 4M. 4 domains. Total control. A life that is unrecognizable from the one you are currently living. Let's begin. The first M, mouth. Most people dramatically underestimate the power of what comes out of their mouth. Not because they haven't heard that words matter. They have. We all have. We grew up with proverbs about it, lessons about it, motivational quotes plastered across social media about it. And yet, despite all of that awareness, most people go through their days speaking with almost no consciousness of what they are actually releasing into the world and into themselves with every sentence they utter. Here is what I want you to understand about your mouth that goes far deeper than the usual conversation about positive thinking. Your words are not just descriptions of your reality. They are instructions to it. When you speak, particularly when you speak repeatedly, habitually, in the patterns that have become so automatic you no longer even hear yourself doing it, you are not reporting on life. You are programming it. You are telling your brain what to look for, what to expect, what to prepare for, and what to believe is possible. This is not mysticism. This is neuroscience. The brain has a system called the reticular activating system, a network of neurons that acts as a filter for the enormous volume of information your senses take in every single moment. It decides what gets through to your conscious awareness and what gets screened out. And it is calibrated, directly, powerfully, and continuously, by the dominant language patterns of your inner and outer speech. Tell yourself repeatedly that things never work out for you, and your RAS will filter reality in a way that confirms that story. Opportunities that contradict the narrative will be screened out. Evidence that supports it will be amplified. And you will walk through life genuinely experiencing a world that appears to confirm your words, not because the world is conspiring against you, but because your own filtering system has been instructed, by your own mouth, to show you only what you keep saying is true. There was a man named Patrick who had a habit he didn't know was a habit. Every time someone asked how he was doing, Patrick said the same thing. Surviving. Getting by. You know how it is. It was meant to be casual. Relatable. The kind of self-deprecating humor that makes people feel comfortable. But Patrick said it every day. Multiple times a day. For years. And one morning, in the kind of honest, unexpected moment of clarity that changes things, Patrick realized that surviving and getting by was exactly what his life had looked like for the last decade. Not thriving. Not building. Not moving forward with any real momentum. Just surviving. He hadn't noticed the connection. But the connection was there, as solid and as real as anything he could have touched. His mouth had been setting the ceiling of his life for 10 years. And he had been walking through every day bumping his head against it, never once looking up to see where it came from. The Stoics understood the weight of speech with remarkable precision. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, his private journal, never intended for anyone else to read, that a man must guard his speech as carefully as his actions, because careless words were not just socially costly. They were internally corrupting. They shaped the character of the person who spoke them, not just the ears of the people who heard them. Mastering your mouth is not about becoming someone who speaks only in affirmations and pretends that difficulty doesn't exist. It is about becoming someone who chooses, with genuine intentionality, which version of reality their words are going to reinforce. It is about understanding that every complaint you voice repeatedly becomes a residence. Every limitation you declare becomes a law. Every story you tell about yourself becomes a self-fulfilling architecture that your life will inevitably conform to. And equally, every clear, honest, possibility-oriented word you speak consistently becomes a different kind of architecture. The kind you actually want to live inside. Watch your mouth. Not occasionally. Not when you remember. Consistently. As a practice. As a discipline. As the first of 4 foundational commitments that will change the material reality of your life. Because the life you are speaking is the life you are building. And the life you are building is the life you are going to live. The second M, mood. Here is something that most people have completely backwards about mood. They treat it as a consequence. Something that happens to them based on what is happening around them. The weather of their inner life, unpredictable, largely outside their control, a byproduct of circumstances they may or may not be able to influence. And because they treat it as a consequence, they wait. They wait for good things to happen so they can feel good. They wait for the situation to improve so their mood can improve. They wait for external conditions to align before they allow themselves to access the internal states that they actually need right now, not later, not after things get better, now, in order to do the work that will produce the better things they are waiting for. This is one of the most quietly devastating cycles in human experience. Because mood is not just a consequence. Mood is a cause. The emotional state you are operating from right now, as you move through your day, make your decisions, interact with the people in your life, respond to the challenges on your path, is not just a reflection of your circumstances. It is actively shaping them. Research in behavioral psychology has shown consistently that people in positive, grounded, resourceful emotional states make better decisions. They are more creative. More resilient. More able to see opportunities in situations that people in depleted, negative, or anxious states experience only as threats. They communicate more effectively. They recover from setbacks faster. They persist longer in the face of difficulty. Your mood is not decoration. It is infrastructure. It is the platform from which every action in your life is launched. And the quality of that platform determines, far more than most people realize, the quality of what gets built on it. There was a woman named Adiz who ran a small business that was struggling. Every morning she woke up and immediately began cataloging everything that was wrong. The clients she hadn't landed. The bills that were due. The competitors who seemed to be doing better. The economy. The timing. The endless list of reasons why things were hard and getting harder. By 8 in the morning, before she had made a single phone call, sent a single email, made a single decision, Adiz had already spent an hour in the worst possible emotional state to conduct business from. And then she wondered why her calls didn't land. Why her pitches felt flat. Why the energy she brought to her work seemed to repel the very results she was working toward. A mentor, an older woman who had built 3 businesses from nothing and lost 2 of them before the third succeeded, said something to Adiz that rearranged her understanding completely. Your mood is your first product. If you can't sell yourself on the possibility of success before 9 in the morning, you cannot sell anything to anyone after it. Adiz started managing her mood the way she managed her schedule. Intentionally. With specific practices designed to move her into a resourceful, grounded, possibility-oriented state before the day made its demands. Not pretending everything was fine. Not performing positivity over real problems. But choosing, deliberately, as an act of professional and personal discipline, to approach those real problems from the best possible internal position. Within 8 months, her business had turned around. Not because the circumstances had changed first. Because she had. Epictetus, who had every reason to allow his mood to be determined by his circumstances, being a man who had been born into slavery and spent years with no external freedom whatsoever, wrote with extraordinary power about the discipline of the inner life. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. This is not naive optimism. This is strategic intelligence. The person who masters their mood is not the person who denies difficulty. They are the person who refuses to let difficulty set the terms of their inner experience, because they understand that their inner experience is the most important variable in determining how the difficulty ultimately resolves. Master your mood. Not as a feeling, but as a discipline. As a daily practice of choosing the internal state that gives you the best possible chance of producing the external results you are working toward. Because your mood is not just how you feel. Your mood is how you perform. How you decide. How you relate. How you create. How you persist. Your mood is everything. The third M, money. Money is one of those topics that makes people deeply uncomfortable in a way that is itself deeply revealing. Some people are uncomfortable talking about it because they don't have enough and the conversation feels like an accusation. Some are uncomfortable because they were raised in environments where money was either scarce and stressful or treated as something not quite spiritual, something that's serious, good people didn't talk about too directly. Some are uncomfortable because they have made mistakes with it that they haven't fully made peace with. But here is what all of that discomfort has in common. It is costing you. Not just financially. Psychologically. Because the things we are uncomfortable examining are the things we cannot improve. And the things we cannot improve control us, quietly, comprehensively, and with a patience that outlasts any temporary good feeling we use to avoid looking at them directly. Money is not the most important thing in life. Anyone who tells you that money is everything has confused a tool for a destination. Money is a tool. An extraordinarily powerful one, but a tool. And like any tool, what it is capable of producing depends entirely on whether the person using it understands it. Most people do not understand money. Not because they are not intelligent. But because they were never taught. They were given 12 years of formal education that covered everything from the periodic table to the causes of ancient wars, and emerged into adulthood without a single lesson in how compound interest works, what the difference between an asset and a liability actually means in daily life, or why the habit of spending everything you earn keeps you permanently at the mercy of circumstances you could otherwise outlast. There was a young man named Emmanuel who earned a good salary. By every external measure, Emmanuel was doing well. Decent apartment. Nice clothes. A social life that looked, on the surface, like a life of someone who had figured things out. But Emmanuel had a secret. He was one missed paycheck from disaster. Not because he didn't earn enough. But because every time money arrived, it left with equal speed and enthusiasm. There was always somewhere for it to go. Something that needed it. Something that deserved it. Something that seemed, in the moment, like a reasonable expense. Emmanuel was not irresponsible. He was unconscious. He had never developed a relationship with money that was based on intention rather than reaction. He had never asked the question that changes everything. Is this money moving me closer to freedom, or further from it? That question, applied consistently, honestly, without the self-deception that emotional spending always requires, is the beginning of financial intelligence. Not a budget. Not a complicated investment strategy. Not something that requires a degree in economics. Just that question. Every time. Seneca wrote with the kind of bluntness that makes you feel slightly uncomfortable and extremely grateful at the same time, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Financial mastery does not begin with how much you earn. It begins with your relationship to what you have. With the discipline to distinguish between what you want in the moment and what you need for the life you are actually trying to build. With the understanding that every financial decision you make today is either building the foundation of your future freedom or quietly eroding it. Master your money. Not as an obsession. As a practice of integrity, the integrity of a person whose external financial behavior is aligned with their actual values and their actual goals. Because the person who controls their money controls their options. And options, the freedom to choose, to move, to say yes to the right things and no to the wrong ones without being held hostage by financial desperation, is one of the most concrete, practical, daily expressions of the freedom the Stoics spent their lives philosophizing about. 3 of the 4 M's. Your mouth, which is programming the architecture of your life with every word you speak. Your mood, which is the infrastructure from which everything you build is launched. Your money, which, when mastered, gives you the options and the freedom that make genuine choice possible. There is a reason the mind comes last. Not because it is the least important. Because it is the most important, and the most important things deserve to be approached after everything else has prepared you for them. We have talked about the mouth, and how the words you speak consistently are not just describing your life but actively constructing it. We have talked about mood, and how the emotional state you operate from is not a passive consequence of your circumstances but a dynamic, manageable, extraordinarily powerful cause of them. We have talked about money, and how financial mastery is not about how much you earn but about the quality of your relationship with what passes through your hands. All 3 of those conversations are real. All 3 of those disciplines are life-changing when practiced with genuine commitment. But here is what I need you to understand before we go any further. Every single one of them is downstream of the mind. Your mouth speaks what your mind believes. Your mood reflects what your mind is focused on. Your money goes where your mind directs it. The mind is not one of 4 equal pillars. The mind is the foundation that the other 3 stand on. And a foundation, when it is cracked, when it is poorly built, when it has been neglected or colonized by patterns that don't serve the life you are trying to build, does not matter how beautiful the structure above it looks. Everything eventually reflects the foundation. Which is why mastering the mind is not just the 4th discipline. It is the one that determines whether the other 3 hold. The 4th M, mind. Let me tell you about 2 farmers. Both farmers received the same plot of land. Same size. Same soil composition. Same access to water. Same weather. Same tools. The first farmer looked at the land and immediately started planting, whatever seeds were available, wherever there was space, without a plan, without preparation, without any thought about what the land needed or what the harvest was actually going to require. The second farmer spent the first season doing something that looked, to everyone watching, like nothing. He cleared the land. Removed the weeds, not just the visible ones but the root systems beneath the surface that would compete with anything he tried to grow. He tested the soil. He studied the seasons. He planned what to plant, when to plant it, how much space each thing needed, and what the harvest would look like 18 months from now. By the end of the first season, the first farmer had a chaotic, overcrowded plot producing small, inconsistent results. The second farmer had, apparently, nothing to show. But what he actually had was something far more valuable than an early harvest. He had a prepared mind. And in the second season, when he planted with intention into prepared soil, everything grew. Not just a little. Abundantly. Consistently. With a yield that made people who had watched him do nothing in the first season come back and ask what his secret was. He didn't have a secret. He had a prepared mind. This is the most important thing I can tell you about the human mind, the thing that separates the people who build remarkable lives from the people who spend their entire existence reacting to whatever grows wild in the unexamined soil of their own consciousness. The mind is land. And like land, it produces whatever is planted in it, whether you planted it intentionally or not. Most people are living in the harvest of seeds they never consciously chose to sow, beliefs planted in childhood by parents who were doing their best with their own unexamined minds. Limitations installed by early experiences of failure or rejection or comparison. Fears that took root in moments of vulnerability and were never pulled out, just worked around, accommodated, built over, until they became so structural that they feel like personality rather than programming. The mind you are currently operating with is not necessarily the mind you chose. But the mind you operate with from this point forward, that is entirely your decision. The architecture of a mastered mind. I want to give you the actual structure of what mind mastery looks like in practice. Not as an abstract aspiration. As a daily, tangible, lived reality. Because the word mastery can make this feel remote, something for monks or philosophers or people with more time and fewer problems than you have. And I want to dismantle that idea completely. Mind mastery is not the absence of negative thoughts. It is not the achievement of permanent peace. It is not a destination you arrive at and then stay in forever without effort. It is a practice. A daily, unglamorous, profoundly consequential practice of tending the land. The first element of that practice is awareness. You cannot change what you cannot see. And most people are living inside thought patterns so automatic, so deeply grooved by years of repetition, that they experience them not as thoughts, but as reality itself. The anxious person does not think I am having an anxious thought right now. They think things are genuinely dangerous and this fear is an accurate response to real conditions. The self-doubting person does not think I am running an old program of self-doubt installed in childhood. They think I am genuinely not capable of this and the evidence is right there. The first act of mind mastery is the act of stepping back, even slightly, even momentarily, and observing the thought rather than being consumed by it. The Stoics called this the view from above, the capacity to zoom out from the immediate experience of a thought or emotion and see it as an event happening in the mind rather than an unquestionable truth about reality. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every single morning. Before the day began. Before the demands of ruling an empire landed on his desk. He would sit with his own mind and examine what was in it, not to judge it, not to suppress it, but to see it clearly. To know what he was working with. That practice, that simple, daily act of honest self-examination, is where every other element of mind mastery begins. Because you cannot redirect a current you cannot see. The second element is deliberate input. We talked about feeding the right wolf in a previous conversation on this channel, and I want to return to that idea here because in the context of mind mastery it becomes even more critical. Your mind is not generating its thoughts in isolation. It is processing, constantly, continuously, with enormous sophistication, the input it receives. From the conversations you have. From the content you consume. From the environments you inhabit. From the people you spend your time with. From the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what is possible. Every piece of input is either building the mind you need or undermining it. There was a woman named Blessing who wanted to change her life in a fundamental way. She had clarity about what she wanted. She had genuine motivation. She had real capability. But every time she made progress, every time she built a little momentum toward the life she could see clearly in her mind, something would pull her back. For 2 years she couldn't identify what it was. Then she did something that felt almost too simple to be the answer. She spent 1 week tracking everything that entered her mind. Every conversation. Every piece of content. Every environment. Every interaction. What she found was sobering. The majority of her mental input, the dominant voices in the ecosystem of her mind, were negative. Not maliciously. But consistently. Friends who defaulted to complaint. Content that was designed to provoke anxiety or outrage. An inner monologue shaped by years of being told she was reaching too high. She was trying to grow a garden in contaminated soil and wondering why nothing flourished. She changed the input. Gradually. Systematically. She didn't cut everyone off or pretend the world was without problems. But she became, for the first time in her life, genuinely intentional about what she allowed to take up residence in her mind. 12 months later, the momentum that had eluded her for 2 years was not just present. It was compounding. Because the soil had changed. And changed soil produces a different harvest. Every time. Without exception. The third element is the discipline of directed thought. The untrained mind wanders. This is not a flaw, it is a feature. The capacity for mind wandering is connected to creativity, to empathy, to the kind of associative thinking that produces genuine insight. But an undisciplined wandering mind, one that has no practice of returning to intention, becomes a liability. It wanders into worry. Into rumination. Into the rehearsal of worst-case scenarios that feel like preparation but are actually just suffering in advance. Directed thought is the practice of deliberately choosing where your mental energy goes, and returning to that choice when the mind drifts, which it will, constantly, because that is what minds do. This is what meditation is actually training. Not the absence of thought. The practice of noticing when the mind has wandered and bringing it back. Again and again. Without judgment. Without frustration. Just, back. To the breath, to the intention, to the present moment, to the thing that actually matters right now. And every single time you bring it back, every single repetition of that simple act of noticing and returning, you are building the neural pathways of self-direction. You are making the mind more obedient to your intentions and less at the mercy of its own undirected momentum. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The directed mind begins with a clear picture of what it is working toward. And then it returns to that picture, every time the noise of distraction, fear, comparison, or doubt pulls it away, with the patient, practiced certainty of a farmer who knows what he planted and trusts the process of growth. The fourth element, and the one that binds the entire practice together, is consistency. Not intensity. Consistency. This is the element that most people get wrong. They approach mind mastery, like most worthwhile things, with enormous initial intensity and insufficient long-term consistency. They meditate every day for 2 weeks and then stop. They journal fervently for a month and then lose the habit. They consume deeply nourishing content for a season and then drift back to the familiar. And then they conclude that the practice doesn't work. But the practice works. The practice has always worked. What failed was the consistency. There was a scientist, a genuine neuroscientist who spent her career studying the brain's capacity for change, who said something in an interview that has stayed with me ever since. She said that the brain does not change in moments of dramatic intensity. It changes in the accumulation of ordinary, repeated, consistent actions that gradually, almost imperceptibly, carve new grooves into the landscape of the mind. Not grand gestures. Grooves. Carved one ordinary day at a time. This is the most honest thing anyone has ever said about personal transformation. Because it removes the romance from it, the idea that there is a moment of sufficient dramatic breakthrough that will change everything at once, and replaces it with something both more demanding and more democratically available. The daily practice. The ordinary, unremarkable, completely unglamorous daily practice of tending the mind. Examining what is in it. Deliberately improving what enters it. Directing where it goes. And returning, again and again, without drama, without frustration, when it wanders. Anyone can do this. Not everyone will. But anyone can. The 4M in integration, when all 4 work together. Now I want you to see what happens when all 4 M's are operating simultaneously, because the individual power of each one is significant, but the compounding effect of all 4 together is something else entirely. Picture a person who has been practicing these 4 disciplines seriously for 1 year. Their mouth speaks with intention. They have broken the habit of careless complaint and self-limiting declaration. The words they speak, to others and to themselves, are building the architecture of the life they actually want to inhabit. People around them notice something has shifted, not in what they say, exactly, but in the weight and the clarity of how they say it. Their mood is managed. Not performed, managed. They have developed a morning practice that moves them into a resourceful state before the day makes its demands. When difficult things happen, and difficult things happen to everyone, they are not immune to being affected. But they recover faster. They respond from a more grounded place. They do not allow temporary adversity to become permanent inner weather. Their money is moving with intention. They know where it goes. They have made the fundamental shift from unconscious spending to conscious directing, and the freedom that is beginning to accumulate in their financial life is translating, gradually but unmistakably, into options. Into the ability to choose. Into the slow, steady loosening of the financial anxiety that had previously been a constant, low-grade hum beneath every other area of life. And their mind, the foundation of all of it, is being tended daily. Cleared of the weeds that accumulated before they knew they needed to clear them. Fed with input that builds rather than depletes. Directed with increasing skill toward the things that matter. Becoming, with each passing day, a more reliable, more powerful, more trustworthy instrument for building the life they are designing. This person is not extraordinary by accident. They are extraordinary by practice. And the extraordinary thing about this particular kind of extraordinariness is that it is available, not to the gifted, not to the lucky, not to the people born into the right circumstances, but to anyone who is willing to take these 4 things seriously and practice them with genuine, sustained, daily commitment. The honest truth about mastery. I want to close this conversation with something real. Mastery is not a state you achieve and then maintain effortlessly. It is not a mountain you climb and then stand on top of permanently. It is a practice that you choose, every single day, including and especially on the days when you don't feel like it, when the results aren't visible yet, when the people around you don't understand what you are doing or why, when the old patterns are louder than the new ones and the familiar feels more powerful than the intentional. There will be days when your mouth runs away from you and you speak from fear instead of faith. There will be days when your mood collapses under the weight of real difficulty and the management tools feel insufficient. There will be days when the money conversation feels overwhelming and the old unconscious patterns reassert themselves with startling force. There will be days when the mind feels ungovernable, scattered, anxious, resistant to every attempt at direction. Those days are not failures. Those days are part of the practice. The Stoics did not teach perfection. They taught progress. The daily, faithful, honest commitment to doing better today than yesterday, not by an enormous dramatic leap, but by the small, consistent, compounding increment of someone who understands that the life they are building is built one ordinary day at a time. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman world, wrote this in his private journal, for no audience but himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wrote that as a reminder to himself. Not as a declaration of achievement. As a daily reminder, because even he, with all his philosophical training and all his practice discipline, needed to come back to the truth every single morning. And so do you. And so do I. Come back to it. Every morning. Every time the mouth slips. Every time the mood dips. Every time the money leaks without intention. Every time the mind wanders into territory that does not serve you. Come back. Not with self-judgment. Not with the exhausting drama of someone who has failed again. Just, back. To the practice. To the discipline. To the 4 things that, when tended with genuine commitment, change not just what your life looks like from the outside, but what it feels like to live inside it. That is the promise of the 4M. Not a perfect life. A directed one. And a directed life, lived with intention, built with discipline, tended with the daily faithfulness of someone who understands what they are growing, is something so far beyond the reactive, unconscious, default existence that most people never question. That the people who achieve it sometimes struggle to explain it to the people who haven't. Not because it is complicated. Because it is simple. And simple things, practiced with extraordinary consistency, produce extraordinary lives. Master your mouth. Master your mood. Master your money. Master your mind. 4 things. Your entire life. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications. And share this with one person in your life who is ready, whether they know it yet or not, to stop living by default and start building by design. This is the Stoic path. And the most powerful, intentional, fully directed version of you, is already under construction. Keep building.